Awesome. Let's get started. I'm Sarah Olivieri. Some of you know me, some of you don't. I'm a nonprofit business strategist, #1 international best-selling author, former executive director, and creator of the Impact Method. And I help nonprofits change the way they operate so they can thrive. And today, in this wham bam, thank you ma'am, micro training, we're going to be talking about delegation. Now, before we dive into my slides, I want to say two things about delegation. One is I've seen delegation go horribly wrong. And what happens in that case is the person who you're delegating to feels frustrated, and the person who's doing the delegating starts to feel like they have to wear all the hats. And that is a direct path to overwhelm city. The other thing I want to say is just a philosophy I have about communication that has always helped me with delegation, with marketing, with any form of communication. And I thought I'd just share that with you for a moment, because if you adopt this view, you'll just feel better every day as you go through your life. And it's this. My philosophy is that on average, the norm is that we miscommunicate to each other as human beings. And it's only when we're very intentional and a little bit lucky that we actually manage to communicate the majority of what was in our heads into somebody else's head. So that is kind of why so many people struggle with delegation, because we're actually trying to communicate what's in our head into somebody else's head so that they can do the work that our hands used to do as though they were our hands. And that is a really big task to ask of communication. So if we assume that it's going to fail unless we're extremely intentional and have a bit of luck, then we'll generally be satisfied whenever we are lucky and get those incredible bits of communication. So why delegate? You've heard the reasons. I just thought I'd share a few here. You'll get more time back in your day. That's kind of the obvious one. But maybe some other ones you haven't thought about is you can actually develop your team's skills. You'll improve communication and the level of trust between you and your team. You'll actually have better leadership. You will be training your leaders of tomorrow, and you will also be having opportunities to discover who is really a great leader as you delegate better. And everybody on your team, you will have increased job satisfaction because you'll be left doing the things you love most. And if you're careful about who you delegate what to, they'll be delegated the things that they love to do, and their job satisfaction will increase as well. And momentum. Momentum is like the gold star of business success. We want momentum because momentum is speed that we already worked for. It's not us pushing the cart. It's when we start to experience the speed of going downhill and letting gravity do some of the work. So I have this 3-step formula for being a great delegator. You can find some other formulas out there, but I kind of distilled this when somebody asked me what my trick was for being such a good delegator. And they had tried other formulas, but they had found that there were just too many steps to remember each time they delegated. For this training, I've named it the DAD method. It's really just a joke for me, but we're going to call it the DAD method of delegation. So there's 3 areas that we need to attend to when we delegate. What is the desired result? What are the available resources? And what are the delegated decisions? So let's break each of those down. So what is that desired end result? What is it? What are the essential elements that need to get done in order for this job to be considered done? Or maybe it's just, what is that final outcome? Like, I need to have a party where all the guests, most of the guests attend, whatever the end result looks like, and the kind of key things that need to be checked off need to be in there. Another key piece to delegating, this is right, the communicate what the end result is going to look like, is to also communicate any known obstacles. So if you had tried doing this and you decided to delegate because it wasn't worth your time because you hit a few time-consuming obstacles, share those up front. Don't let those be a surprise for the person you're delegating to, and specifically choose to delegate that part of their job is to overcome those obstacles. That way, when they hit an obstacle, they won't come back to you for more information if it's an obstacle you already told them you wanted them to overcome on their own. The second thing is the available resources. Be specific, about what you've already put in place that they're going to need. Do they need access to your calendar? Is there information in an email? Is there a document? Tell them where that document is, or tell them you don't know and they need to go find it, right? Back to those known obstacles. And also be really specific if you are one of those resources, or if you're not one of those resources. Sometimes when I delegate, I tell people, there's this fuzzy area and you're going to need this information that's in my head. So make sure you come back and get that information out of my head. And sometimes I say, this is something I want completely off my plate. Don't come to me for any information. I'd rather you get it done in an imperfect way than lean on me as a resource. So be really specific about the resources that are already available, even if you don't want to kind of go down that rabbit hole of, you don't have to spoon feed the resource to the person, but tell them basically that it exists and get them started on where to find it or how to access it. And then the third thing is delegating decisions. I think this is one of the most important and left off pieces around delegating effectively. And that is, you have to tell the person you're delegating to and actually delegate which decisions they can make and which decisions you don't want them to make, that you want them to return to. This is going to really reduce people coming back to you around whatever you've delegated. And this is the piece that's also really going to bring out the leaders on your team or train people to being leaders. Being a leader means, part of being a leader means someone who's able to make decisions on their own. That's one of the critical functions of being a leader, besides delegating, of course. So be very specific that, you are, if you're planning a party, they're in charge of deciding what napkin color to choose. Now, maybe there's some parameters like pick any color that's part of our color scheme, but you decide, I don't want to make that decision. Maybe you're delegating a task of answering the phone and it's their job to decide making sure that all the hours are covered and who's going to cover them, or maybe what the standard greeting is. Just be super specific. And if there's any decision you want to maintain ownership of, by all means be explicit that you want that person to come back to you for a specific type of decision. But recognize the more decisions that you hold on to, the more likely what you've delegated is going to come back to you. And if you're a bottleneck, then you're going to be a bottleneck for getting this done. So delegate as many decisions as you feel comfortable with. And there's definitely a learning curve as you start delegating similar types of decisions to different people. Or to the same person, over and over again, they will get more and more competent and you'll get more and more comfortable delegating decisions to them. One example of this, I've worked with a number of executive assistants or virtual assistants, and they help communicate on my behalf. And always when I start working with them, I'm telling them I'm making the final send decision on every piece of writing that has my name on it. But as I start to get really comfortable and realize I don't have any edits for that person, I will actually delegate that. Write this message up, send it on my behalf. I do not need to review that message. You are in charge of deciding whether or not it is up to the quality standards that we expect. So I have just an example for you of DAD in action, and then I'm going to take some questions, and that will be it for our micro training. So here's an example delegation, DAD. So what is the desired outcome? In this case, we have submit a grant application by the deadline, right? And be sure to fill in any missing information that we haven't created yet, right? That's the known obstacle piece, is that there is missing information that you're asking this person to fill in. The next piece, is the available resources. So you tell the person team leads should have most of the information you need specific to this grant. You can also pull past grant applications from the grants folder, and you can ask me, so I'm saying that I'm one of the resources, for any information the team leads can't supply, or if you'd like me to review the application, right? I'm a resource for quality control. And then finally, the delegated decision, and this is a big one, right? So this is for someone you really are confident in their skills. You are responsible for deciding if and when the application is ready for submission. So notice here, I am not allowing myself to be a bottleneck. I'm not allowing my own kind of pickiness to get in the way, but I am kind of adding that level of quality control, making sure that the person I'm delegating to has me as a resource if they're at all concerned or have any questions about the quality. So that's my example for a pretty big delegation. One more note I'll say is you can delegate things in writing. A lot of task management tools have a lot of the pieces in to remind you to fill in certain information like deadlines, right? That goes up here, the desired outcome. If there's a deadline that needs to be met, that should be in there. But you can also, if you struggle with that, if that feels time consuming, you can delegate verbally. So send a voice message or just meet somebody in the hall. A recording is often more helpful. So I often, if I haven't written out a task, I delegate either by making a screen share video, where I'm actually just kind of showing what I'm describing if it's something visual I want the person to work on. Or I use a tool called Voxer, which just sends audio messages instead of text messages. And I find that's really helpful when I'm kind of delegating something that's come up quickly and I just want to share it verbally. And then the person can receive the message and add it to their task management system, however they do it. So that's the training. If you would like to talk with me one-on-one, I'm happy to give you a free consultation. Just go to pivotground.com/apply. Thank you, everyone.